Welcome, welcome, welcome to the very first episode of Where in the World? The show, or I should say the series that goes over world lore in Pathfinder's 2nd edition. I'm going to try to keep this as 2nd edition as possible. I might make some 1st edition references here and there, but I'll definitely let you know if I do so, and what sections to pay attention to for that. But we're going to be going over, as you can see on the right here, Absalom and the Starstone Isle. A wonderful, wonderful area. This is actually where the Pathfinders come from. They come, or I should say, this is where their headquarters is here in Absalom, as well as one of the newer adventure paths that just recently came out, the Agents of Edgewatch, that takes place here in Absalom. So this is also one of the areas known for three deities who were human that ascended to godhood. Also took place here. But again, more on gods and all that stuff when we get to the Oh My Gods series coming out, I believe, let's see, next week. So, or I should say, yeah, next week. So be on the lookout for that. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Absalom and the Starstone Isle. Now, the nations that reside here. So, by the way, this is coming straight out of the, the Lost Omens World Guide. So all the pictures and things you'll see here come, or most of them come straight from the Lost Omens World Guide. So either way, with the nations, it's only one nation represented here in Absalom and the Starstone Isle. They're not separate things. Is Absalom, like I said, Grand Council type of government, meaning kind of like a Senate style kind of system. Then you again, the capital of this country is Absalom. They are a neutral aligned nation, meaning that they again try not to take sides, and one of the main reasons for that is because anyone can try and come and become a god. So you have, tieflings, or you have evil, not even necessarily tieflings, you have evil aligned people that will come and give their shot at taking the test to become a god, the Starstone trial. Places of interest here in Absalom and the Starstone Isle are, of course, Absalom, which is the major land you see here, and the Isle of ERRAN, which you'll see north of the Absalom area. We'll go over some of the specific sections here later in the overview, or later in this video. So, peoples. I don't have an image for peoples, because when it comes to the peoples of Absalom, all people are accepted. In terms of racism, you're not going to find much racism here. You will see that in some of the other videos, racism isn't uncommon depending on what regions we're talking about. So when we get there, obviously we'll go over that. But with Absalom, all peoples are accepted. When it comes to languages, all languages are spoken in Absalom, because if anyone can come take the test, chances are you're going to have a lot of different types of cultures. So one of the nice things about that is it really kind of allows GMs and players, or players from a background standpoint, really allows you to kind of there's a lot of freedom for creation here. Moving forward, we have the factions. We have the Pathfinder Society at the top. We have the Firebrands, and we have the Knights of Last Wall that reside here in, or the primary. So when it comes to factions, I should say primary factions that reside in Absalom. Obviously, your GM can put whatever he wants in there, or whatever he or she wants in there for factions. But those, in terms of canon, these are the main factions that reside within Absalom. Next, in terms of religions, these are the primary accepted religions. We have Norgor, Shaylin, Iori, Iyomade, Caden Kaleen, and Abadar. Now with Norgabur, you're probably not going to see people walking around saying, "Hey, I worship Norgabur." That's very uncommon and weird to do because the Norgabur faith is very secretive. So again, they reside there, and in terms of the secrets that they try to capture here in Absalom, is they're trying to get any information they can about the Starstone test or the Starstone trial, so that any of their followers can attempt to become godhood and actually achieve it, so that they can further their faith, their edicts, and ways of life. So with all the other ones, it kind of makes sense. Shaylin, you'll see here, she relates because there's a lot of art and luxury goods traded here, but we'll get to that in a second. Aurori was literally one of the deities who was one of the mortal deities that ascended to God, or mortals that ascended to godhood. Iyomade, one of the other ones that ascended to godhood, and Caden Galen was one of the other ones that ascended to godhood here. Abadar is also a primary religion here, or Abadar's way of life is primary religion because of mercantilism, and this is one of the wealthiest, it's the second wealthiest nation in all of Golarion, next to Katapesh, which we'll get to in another video, in the Golden Road. So next we have the resources, like we were talking. We have art, armor, weapons, lumber, seafood, textures, ship, and a lot of resources here. But it makes sense because geographically they're located in between the two major continents, and then you have Absalom. So I mean, they're gonna get all the trade you can imagine. So just about anything. In terms of sky metal, for those that are new to sky metal are the rare precious materials such as adamantine, and there's like two others in the book, but yeah, those are the sky metals. So basically an easy way to remember that is materials you wouldn't see under level 15. So just keep that in mind. All right, then we have the notable figures here. We have the Scion Lord Avid of House Arnsen, Teriok of DIOBEL. So he, let me get my notes here. He, in terms of, I'm just reading this straight from the book here. He hopes to use the disappearance of Lord Gear of Gix to find a way to get himself named Primarch in his stead. In terms of the lore around that, we'll get to that here when we go over the main reading and overview. So next we have Winsol Starborn, excuse me, the High Council in Absalom, or the Grand Council as they called it earlier, named him respected retired captain of the city's first guard, siege lord of Absalom during the Fiend Flesh Siege of 4717. For those unaware, Pathfinder 2nd edition takes place in 4719. So in terms of, I'm not, how do I put this? I'm not going to be doing the timeline up to 4719. I'm going to be doing just current. I'm going to be sticking to current. So next we have the Watcher Lord Olthun II, Lastwall's final Watcher Lord, which is essentially like one of their like chieftains. You can look at that in terms of their organization. Fled to Absalom only months ago. This Nidalee Paladin Lord remains hugely influential even in defeat. So sounds like this guy was some sort of runaway from a war. So that how do I put this? He took him and some of his men and women from Lastwall and brought him over to Absalom. So that's why we have the presence of the Lastwall, the Knights of Lastwall there. Next, we have the Decemvirate. The Decemvirate are the masked ruling body of the famous explorers organization known as the Pathfinder Society. What this entire game is based off of. This council is composed of 10 of the most experienced Pathfinders. So the most experienced Pathfinders, essentially when they go through their election process or promotion process, if they actually do become high, or if they do become part of the Decemvirate, they have to be masked the rest of their life until they retire from the society, or they're killed. So, either way, next we have the city of Absalom itself. So, okay. So this comes from the book, and I'll go ahead and read it here. Absalom boasts some of the finest and oldest buildings and monuments on the inner sea. Only over nearly 5 millennia, Absalom has been built, rebuilt, and rebuilt again, resulting in a tapestry of architectural styles as diverse as the countless citizens and visitors who throng its streets and markets. Nearly a dozen districts huddle within the city's walls, each as large or larger than the capitals of other nations, and each with numerous neighborhoods and intrigues tempting to both common residents and thrill-seeking adventurers alike. And then they have the districts here. So I'll go ahead and blow this up for you. The city of Absalom has many districts here, all of which we'll be going over now. The first one is the Ascendant Court, located almost pretty much dead center of the city, shortly after raising the Isle of Kortos. ERRAN, prior demigod, used his newfound divine power to erect the Starstone Cathedral, a bewildering, ever-changing series of trapped passages and confounding chambers meant to thwart anyone who might follow in his footsteps. The cathedral perches upon a lonely tor at the center of a seemingly bottomless chasm at the heart of Absalom. Enormous, ostentatious temples to the great gods of Golarion ring the chasm and the ancient neighborhood stretching out from it, flanked by lesser churches and shrines dedicated to deities mighty and forgotten. The district's oldest temple of ERRAN, the first of its kind in Absalom, is among the architectural triumphs of the Inner Sea. As perhaps the best symbol of the fall of Absalom's founding father, the earthquake-damaged edifice now serves as the embassy of Chiliax. So, that is the Ascendant Court. Next, we have the Aslanti Keep. Excuse me. Located in the far north, you can see highlighted in red here. ERRAN himself designed and erected this multi-towered fortified keep, and the structure's traditional ancient Aslanti style has been widely imitated throughout Absalom and the Inner Sea regions over the ages. The keep is the headquarters for the First Guard, Absalom's army that polices external threats. The keep's grand vault once served as a refuge for the city's entire populace in dire emergencies, as it did during the first siege some time ago. But although the vault is immense, the city's population is now too great for all to shelter here. The vault also holds the huge tablets containing ERRAN's first laws of Absalom, the foundation of its civic government. And that concludes the Aslanti Keep. Next, we have the coins. Much of Absalom's mercantile activity takes place in this sprawling hive of crowded streets and teeming markets. From dawn to dusk, hawkers tout their wares to streetwise customers, haggling in 100 languages amid bleeding livestock, performing musicians, and the grind of wagon wheels on cobblestones. The city's largest market, the Grand Bazaar, is said to contain nearly any object a buyer could ever want, provided they take the considerable time to search through the plaza's hundreds of brightly flagged stalls and semi-permanent shops to find it. By night, many of the district's seedier neighborhoods become havens of violent crime, as pickpockets and thieves from the puddles and the docks wander north in search of heavy purses. One of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the coins was once one of its most lucrative. An elevated stone platform known as Misery Road, the center of Absalom's now outlawed slave trade. Today, the neighborhood is the center of a rundown slum, avoided by the district's famously corrupt watch, known cynically as the Token Guard. The squalid chambers within the raised causeway, formerly known as the slave pits of Absalom, are today inhabited by some of the city's most desperate and depraved criminals. And that concludes the coins. Next, we have the docks located on the southern side. Absalom's teeming waterfront is a district of taverns, flop houses, and warehouses, echoing with sailors' chanties, barking dock workers, and the trundling of wagons carrying cargo through crowded streets. Hundreds of ships from all over Golarion dock in Absalom's harbor every day, and goods from scores of nations flow through the docks to the city's markets. A maze of half-sunken ships called the Flotsam Graveyard guards Absalom's harbor from invasion by sea, as do detachments of the city's navy and hippocampus-mounted wave riders, who patrol the Bay of Kortos and the waters around the Starstone Isle from their base in Escadar. And that concludes the docks. Next, we have Eastgate, located on the east side. I know, mind-blowing. It sometimes takes 2 hours or more to get from Eastgate to districts on the far side of town, but most residents find the long commute a fair exchange for the relative safety of Eastgate's cozy neighborhoods. A few manor homes of minor nobles peek above the thatched roofs of the district, which houses many more workers and artisans than hobnobbing members of high society. The Loa Aslanti enclave of Giltown, the city's largest gathering of this ancient line of aquatic humans, is also found here. Situated out of sight of major roads behind a row of inexpensive housing for the district, watch, laborers, and clerks, Eastgate's verdant Green Ridge, neighborhood is home to the Grand Halt, the oldest and largest tree in the Isle of Kortos. This multi-trunked fig tree spans several city blocks, with buildings demolished or modified to account for its increasingly fecund growth, especially in the last decade. Even as blights like the Tyrant's Grasp and the Welt seem to rob Kortos of its vitality, the Grand Halt grows stronger year after year. A fanatic cult called the Circle of Stones cares for the tree, as well as for Elanthe, the immortal dryad queen who dwells within the tree. The Halt provides a refuge for nature-longing adventurers like druids and rangers, whom the cult hires to tackle all manners of adventures designed to further Elanthe's influence in the city and greater Kortos. And that concludes the Eastgate. Next, we have the Foreign Quarter, located, I would say, Central West. Absalom's Foreign Quarter boasts whole neighborhoods that take on character of distant lands. Taverns, hostels, and inns crowd the streets near the district's largest thoroughfares, attracting those who come to Absalom by road or by sea to rest a while cordial strangers chattering in a symphony of languages. Foremost among the district's attractions is the Errorium, an immense coliseum that hosts gladiatorial combats, mock sea battles, religious festivals, historical pageants, and more. The largest open-air arena on the inner sea, the Errorium boasts multiple public battles each day, and its gladiators count themselves among the city's most influential celebrities. The imposing structure takes its name from Errori, and that deity's clergy administers an influential temple and fighting college in the arena's understructure that draws combatants from all over Golarion. Not far from the arena is the Grand Lodge of Absalom, the worldwide headquarters for the Pathfinder Society Adventurers Guild. Beyond a massive gate bearing the glyph of the open road lie 7 ancient fortresses, each with its own function related to the Society's worldwide affairs. Adventurers set out from the Grand Lodge on missions through Greater Kortos and far beyond, with all Pathfinder agents invited to return home to the Lodge every year for the Order's Grand Convocation, a boisterous occasion for information sharing and engaging in friendly competition. There's a subsection here called Archaic Wayfinders. Discovery of the ancient Aslanti Aeon stones and their subsequent reverse engineering to create Wayfinders counted among the first triumphs of the Pathfinder Society. Over the centuries, Wayfinders have taken on a homogeneous design, with the vast majority being virtually identical copies of one another, meticulously crafted to an exact formula by the Society's artificers. Things were not always so orthodox, however, and examples of archaic Wayfinders can still be found at the bottom of forgotten pit traps and in the collection of wealthy Pathfinder agents across the city. And that concludes the Foreign Quarter. Next, we have the Ivy District. Located in the northwest part, I'll just say a thin section of the northwest part of the city of Absalom. Absalom's center of art and culture, the Ivy District boasts gorgeous manor houses, beautiful gardens, and equally alluring residents. Theaters, performance halls, and concert venues with worldwide reputations crowd the ivy-lined streets that give the district its name, as do dozens more with less savory standing. Performers and artists scrape by on the patronage of nobles, and bardic schools like the White Grotto train the next generation of performers. Perhaps due to its natural beauty, the Ivy District is particularly popular with elves and half-elves. And that concludes the Ivy District. Next, we have the PETAL District, located on the predominant northeastern section of the city. The wealthiest district in all of Absalom looks down upon the city from its perch on Eridan's Hill. Brick-framed medians upon the district's broad avenues stand lush with colorful flora, giving the district its name. The richest noble families and the most powerful merchant lords and guildmasters keep manors in the PETAL District, ever striving to outdo one another with their ostentation of their estates. The city's oldest academy of magical instruction, the College of Mysteries, is tucked among these wealthy mansions and caters largely to the youth of Absalom's nobility. The Ire Zoko, the enigmatic full-faced magical tattoos of the college's master students, are a badge of honor in the PETAL District, equal to the finest and most luxuriant gowns designed by the city's master tailors. And that concludes the PETAL District. Next is the Precipice Quarter. We have in the southeastern area of the city of Absalom. 20 years ago, a terrible earthquake sheared the cliffside district of Beldrin's Bluff into the harbor below and collapsed many of the grand structures of what had been a carnival-like quarter of soaring pavilions, penny museums, cacophonous menageries, and stately manors situated around the three-towered demesne of the long-dead archmage Beldrin, a major figure of Absalom's early years. In the wake of this catastrophe, the Grand Council effectively abandoned the district leaving it to become infested with monsters and criminals. Acting Primarch Winsel Starburn, the man we saw earlier, himself a retired captain of Absalom's First Guard, has rejected his predecessor's laissez-faire attitude toward the district. And for the past 3 years, his office has sponsored expeditions aimed at reclaiming this quarter. The efforts have been met with some success, but among the reclaimed greenhouses and galleries are cursed mausoleums, flooded schoolyards inhabited with undead children, and many other horrors. The Precipice Quarter is on its way to redemption, but considerable dangerous works remains to be seen to see the job. The Precipice Quarter is on its way to redemption, but considerable dangerous work remains to see the job through. And that concludes the Precipice Quarter. Next is the Puddles, located on the opposite side, the southwest side of the city of Absalom. The slum district known as the Puddles has always been prone to flooding, but in the last decade, things have grown increasingly desperate, with water now covering the majority of the district's streets to the height of a human's thighs or deeper. Those residents who refuse to flee, including no small number of deliberately hiding out from the Absalom City Watch, have taken to building makeshift bridges and ramps between the district's notoriously close-packed buildings, resulting in a vast and confounding network of skyways capable of delivering brave travelers with a strong sense of balance from one end of the district to another. I could definitely see that being used in Agents of Edgewatch. If not, I would use it. Next, we have the West Gate, located, you guessed it, on the west side of town. This sleepy, largely safe residential district is home to mid-tier merchants, common shopkeepers, and up-and-coming citizens who can't yet afford more expensive accommodations in the upscale neighborhoods of the PETAL or Ivy districts. Businesses mix with townhouses and flats, where the district abuse the foreign quarter, but Westgate gets more residential as one approaches the city wall, with smaller homes giving way to modest manors and stately villas. And that's Westgate. And finally, in terms of the city of Absalom, we have the Wise Quarter, located on the northern side, just under the Aslanti Keep. Absalom's reputation as a center of learning in Golarion dates back to its earliest days. Famed institutions like the Archon Miriam Arcane School, Blackros Museum, and the Great Library of the Foray Logos contribute to Absalom's academic pedigree, drawing knowledge-hungry students from all over the world. The Wise Quarter holds these institutions and scores more, and its broad avenues throng with students and instructors alike. The district is also home to Absalom's civic government, including the ancient monolithic meeting place of the Grand Council and the honeycomb array of administrative buildings that serve its vast bureaucracy. And with that, that concludes the city of Absalom. Now we have the places of interest within the within the Absalom and Starstone Isle. So first we have the Carnlands. As you can see here, is situated around the Tyrant's grasp and encompasses Absalom. So this barren wasteland surrounding Absalom is littered with scores of siege castles, monuments to the failed invasions of 5 millennia, whose near-forgotten chambers are now home to monsters, brigands, and the unquiet dead. The strongholds vary in size from the mile-tall spire of Nex, 10 miles north of the city, to the tumble-down pyramid of the Dog, just outside the Puddles. enticing rumors of the undiscovered chambers and unclaimed treasures in Siege's castles just beyond the city walls beckon adventurers to explore their darkened depths. Bum, bum, bum. Next, we have DIOBEL. Very, 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 very small section here. DIOBEL is actually just a place of interest. It's not like a section of land. Located here on the southwest side of Absalom. The so-called back door to Absalom squats upon a wide wooden boardwalk at the end of a shallow harbor on the island's southwest coast. Cargo-laden barges skim over rich oyster beds between the bustling trade town and the trawl, a maze of steep stonework walls crusted with seaweed, barnacles, and shellfish. All commercial traffic coming through the trawl falls under the careful scrutiny of the CONSORTIUM, an association of guild masters and merchant lords who control the island's considerable mining, farming, trapping, fishing, and oyster harvesting trades and administer DIOBEL's many thriving markets. It's an open secret that they also control a conduit for illicit goods, smuggled into and out of Absalom by road without corruption, or without risking the scrutiny of the harbor guard, The consortium's corruption makes DIOBEL a hotbed of political intrigue against the high and mighty of Absalom, inspiring a chaotic atmosphere. And while groups keep everything well regulated, there is a sense that this arrangement could collapse at any moment. We then have the Dunmire. As you can see here, is located on the northern side of the island of Absalom. North of the Kortos Mountains, the isle slopes towards the sea, and the central lowlands sink into the Dunmire, a vast bog shrouded in thick fog that reaches a human's knees. The miasma conceals all matter of filth and disease, and isolated enclaves of kobolds, lizard folk, hags, and criminal outcasts huddle under its cover. The first guard's eagle garrison long ago ceded the Dunmire to wilderness, making it effectively outside the legal authority of Absalom. A squalid little village called Pier's End sits upon a deep harbor on the coast, offering cheap ferries to Escadar for the rare cross-island adventurer who manages to survive travel through the swamp. And that concludes the Dunmire. Next, we have the Immenwood, which, as you can see here, is just north of Absalom, but again outside of the Carnland. The Immenwood, the vast primordial woodland north of Absalom, has provided lumber to the city and its vassals for almost as long as it has been sheltered, as long as it's sheltered its enemies and outcasts. To the west, past the bustling town of Merivon, epicenter of the island's logging trade, the magic of the old Forest Aeon Tower once enriched the soil and bolstered growth. In the island's earliest days, trees in the western Immenwood grew taller and faster than anywhere else on the island, and Kortos grew rich, exporting wood to Kadira and the northern coast of Garun. The death of ERRAN weakened the tower's magic, however, and now the harvested trees replenish at the normal rate, perhaps even slower, and the lumber barons of the Kortos Consortium look to druids in hopes of restoring the forest to its previous glory. The central Immenwood is older and craggier than the outskirts, prone to tangled undergrowth and an intertwined canopy and long shadows. The forest's eastern reach touches the tyrant's grasp, where blighted trees grow warped and twisted by the necromantic corruption left by Tarbafon's defeat. and the clearings are haunted by undead wretches and sinister cultists of the Whispering Way. The Immenwood Isles hide many ruins and lost settlements, along with several active fortresses. The wooded foothills of the Kortos Mounts hold mines both active and inactive, almost all of which have inhabitants of one kind or another. Patrols of the First Guard's Eagle Garrison range the trails connecting the forest settlements, which often fall prey to outlaws. The centaur tribes that dwell in the forest are far more hospitable than their violent, xenophobic cousins of the Scrape, but they've suffered terribly at the hands of Absalom in recent years, and tensions remain high. Next, we have the Kortos Mounts. One second here. Situated here, dead center of the land, of the island of Absalom. The soaring mountains of central Kortos loom large beyond Absalom's skyline when viewed from the sea, and are identifiable to sailors and islanders as the Absalom Lighthouse, Eastgate's Blue Tower, and the Spire of Necks. Several large mountains, some capped with snow and ice, cut distinctive enough silhouettes against the sky as to take on a cultural significance even to folk who never leave Absalom. Most notable are Mount Ganog, Arazlant Mox, and the Weeping Grandfather, each of which have its own legends, tavern songs, and folklore. Twisting crevices and sharp ridges make travel through the region a treacherous proposition. To say nothing of the vicious harpies who roost in secluded defiles and crude villages at the tree line's edge, or the drakes, wyverns, and dragons who lurk nearer the rocky peaks. And that concludes Kortos Mounts. Next, we have the Scrape, the predominantly northeastern side of Absalom. When Vordrani Voon's brazen arch thrummed to life as a magical portal at the center of the Isle's eastern plateau, the warlord called his armies from a continent away, and a seemingly infinite horde of minotaurs, harpies, and centaurs burst onto the Isle of Kortos. The plateau thundered with the hooves of 10,000 centaurs, whole tribes surging in the vast interlocking circles to unleash a terrible earthquake upon Absalom. Just as they had brought upheaval to so many of the ancient cities of Kazmaran, Eredin reversed their seismic magic back upon them, killing Voradni Voon and shattering the brazen arm into a dozen jagged fragments. Countless centaurs toppled into deep rifts as the landscape cracked and seethed in violent destruction. After the rending of the brazen arch, the devastated eastern plateau became known as the Scrape. Most of the surviving minotaurs fled into the Riven Hills, where they harry Absalom and its allies to this day from their settlement at Hazrak. Voon's feral harpies, the last to give up the fight, fled to the highlands in the Kortos Mounts, as they have grown no more hospitable over the centuries. That concludes the Scrape. Next, we have the Swordlands, which is predominantly the western side of the island of Absalom. Kortos owes its great bounty not just to the fertile fields of its western reaches, but also to the enormous Aeon towers and their Aeon orbs that have magically sustained its flora since antiquity. Unknown parties stole the Aeon orb near Willowside a decade ago, leaving its tower a crumbling crumbling cenotaph, incapable of holding back a strange environmental devastation known as the Welt, which grows from the western side of the Dunmire by a mile each year. The old forest tower near the lumber town of Maravon once ensured the health and regrowth of the western Inwood, but its powers grow weaker and weaker each season. The other 3 Aeon towers still function for now, but their caretakers look on uneasily and wonder how long they and the famous agricultural prosperity of Kortos can endure. Next, we have the Tyrant's Grasp, located just outside of Absalom, or about less than 50 miles northeast of Absalom. The city of Absalom, excuse me. The site of the Whispering Tyrant's defeat is a blasted wasteland of necromantic corruption, stretching nearly 15 miles across its plains, forests, and hills, northeast of the Spire of Nex. The Lich seemingly perished in a tremendous blast of magical energy that wrenched the undead lord's right hand from his bony wrist. And the skeletal hand remains there still, unwilling to loosen its grip upon the Isle of Kortos. Cultists of the Whispering Way flock to the tainted land, seeing it as the most likely beachhead for their lord's inevitable return to claim his hand and the Starstone so he could ascend to godhood. The first guard has annihilated 3 attempted settlements by these dark devotees, but their numbers seem to be growing. Undead creatures, always a potential menace in the Karnlands, are notably more numerous within this region. Undead within the Tyrant's Grasp gain the ability to sense living creatures as an imprecise sense with a range of 30 feet. They also gain positive resistance equal to their level. Interesting. So that concludes the main island of Absalom as we move to the Isle of ERRAN. From the earliest days, so as you can see, it is highlighted here in the north. My apologies, get a little zoom in there. It is located to the north of the island of Absalom here. The sections we'll be going over, just go back, are going to be is just going to be Escadar, as you can see, is at the southern tip there of the Isle of ERRAN. From the earliest days, the Isle of ERRAN was a place set apart from the domain of mortals, kept sacrosanct as a personal refuge for Eredin and his most trusted devotees. It is said that ERRAN holds more secrets than all volumes of the Pathfinder Chronicles combined, as the Isle's northern forests contain hundreds of tombs and monoliths unrelated to Eredin or his religion. Absalom's navy frequently uncovers these ruins as they cut down sections of the forest to obtain lumber for ship construction, and they often hire adventurers to explore their strange discoveries. As we focus into Escadar here, I don't believe that I have a slide for... No, okay. In ancient times, Escadar was the site of an important Eredinite monastery called Saint Sarnax, the training academy and esoteric library of the Knights of the Aeon Star, an order of holy sword mages who accompanied Eredin in the uncertain days before his ascension. Although the island's northern reaches remained reserved for Eredin's exclusive personal use for centuries after his last appearance in Absalom, St. Sarnax and its small port community remained open to Eredin's clergy, with many visiting to consult ancient Aslanti manuscripts, not recorded in Absalom's Foray Logos library. Only 3 elderly knights of the Aeon Star remain today to maintain St. Sarnax. But the white marble monastery still shines as brightly on the southern shores of Escadar as it did in Eridan's day. 5 centuries ago, Absalom fortified the harbor at St. Sarnax as headquarters for the city's mighty navy, naming the expanded settlement Escadar after a hero of the pirate siege. Scores of warships crowd Escadar's harbor, from which they set out on regular missions escorting merchant ships, hunting pirates, or patrolling the nearby seaways. When in port, sailors mix in Escadar's numerous barracks, saloons, gambling dens, and drug parlors. Escadar also features the House of the Cresting Wave, an embassy of the Low Aslanti, who dreads treasures from the sea to hawk in the city's modest public markets. And that concludes Absalom and the Starstone Isle in terms of region knowledge, region history, and all that fun stuff. We're now going to move into the backgrounds granted by the for those who are from this region. So first we have the children of the Puddles. I'll just read them here. You grew up in the soggy, squalid quarter of Absalom known as the Puddles. You're at home in tightly packed urban environments. And of course, they give you dexterity or intelligence and a free boost. You're training in acrobatics, because they talked about balance before. And the Absalom lore skill. You gain the steady balance, now a fitting, skill feat. Next, we have the DIOBEL Pearl Diver. You spent a portion of your youth diving and gathering precious pearls from under the attentive eyes of the Cortos Consortium merchants. You have Constitution and Dexterity. Constitution because you swim a lot, makes sense. Dexterity because gotta be quick. You're training the Athletics skill and the Ocean lore skill. Athletics because swimming makes a lot of sense, and Ocean because makes sense. You gain the Underwater Marauder, which allows you to fight better under the water. A freed slave of Absalom. As a recently freed slave in Absalom, you belong to a close-knit social class at the heart of the city's most important trades. You can choose between Constitution or Intelligence and a free ability boost. Constitution because hardy slave or ex-slave, and Intelligence. I don't really know why they would go with Intelligence, but that's their call. You're trained in the Society skill and the Absalom lore skill. You gain the Streetwise skill feat, which makes sense. Excuse me. The Grand Council Bureaucrat. You've spent years working as a clerk to a functionary in Absalom's government. Your service taught you a thing or two about rousing speeches and manipulating the city's bureaucracy. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be Charisma or Intelligence, which both feel very right there. You're trained the Society skill, Government lore, and Group Impression, which all line up very well. An inlander, you grew up in the untamed region of the Isle of Cortos, and you know how to survive in the wild. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be to Constitution or to Wisdom, which I feel both make sense because traveling a lot, Constitution and Wisdom because nature. You're trained in Survival skill, pretty much no-brainer, and a lore skill related to the terrain type, such as hills, mountains, or I would say if you're from Absalom, be hills, mountains, forest, or I don't know how you would just a deserted area. Like, I guess it wouldn't be desert because like the Carnlands are a wasteland, so it'd be interesting. Anyway, and you gain the survey wildlife skill, which also makes sense. Menagerie Dung Sweeper. Now, of course, most people are like, I don't want to shovel shit. What kind of background is that? Well, you might want to read it again. Whether you watched warrior beasts below the Errorium's arena or tended to the mutated animals of a PUDDLES sideshow, you are experienced with all manner of weird wildlife. I think the name was is going to kind of push people away from it. I would have called it something else, a dung sweeper. People are gonna see dung sweeper. Don't even want to read it. It's not a bad background, but again, so constitution or wisdom. Constitution because hardy, wisdom because nature or animals. You're trained the nature skill and the animal lore skill, both no-brainers, and you gain train animal, which again, no-brainer. Pathfinder hopeful. You have long wanted to join the adventurous Pathfinder society. You have taken up the dangerous life of an adventurer in hopes of earning a spot amongst the Pathfinders. Choose 2 ability boosts, Constitution or Intelligence. I don't know about Constitution. I would say Wisdom or Intelligence, and the reason for that is because Pathfinders are very perceptive. And they have to be because they go dungeon crawling. So I would say Wisdom or Intelligence, I think, would be more my kind of shtick on that. You're trained in the society, which of course you can just take as the other ability boost. You're trained in the society skill and the Pathfinder society lore. You gain the additional lore skill feat, which is pretty bitchin'. It gives you 2 lores out the gate. It's pretty nice. Not bad. Then we have the Trade Consortium Underling. Your experience as a ledger keeper for one of Absalom's trade guilds has made you a canny investor and shrewd entrepreneur. Choose 2 ability boosts, intelligence or wisdom, which I think they just give to all merchant backgrounds, which I'm a big fan of. You're trained in the society lore and business lore skill. You gain the experienced professional skill feat, which at level 1 to have experienced professional is so good. It is such an undervalued skill feat that people don't realize is something you wish you got earlier, because you would have not lost all that money, and you wouldn't have lost all those jobs if you're doing a lot of downtime, which a considerable amount of people are definitely doing downtime with lore to earn cash if they're not crafters. So anyway, next we move into the Pathfinder agent section here. This is the archetype that is provided to you or available to you if you're from Absalom. The Pathfinder agent. So we have the Pathfinder agent dedication, which again, prerequisites: you must be a member of the Pathfinder Society and you are from Absalom. If you're not from Absalom, you do not have access to this dedication or archetype. So your Pathfinder training has broadened your horizons and made you more flexible at various skills, since you never know when you might need an obscure skill to complete your mission. So you become trained in Pathfinder lore or an expert if you're already trained. So if you took that background. When you use a skill untrained, your proficiency bonus is equal to your level. Instead of 0, you gain access to Wayfinders, called Rulebook page 17. Now here's why that's really great. Because you don't have to take the untrained improvisation feat. You gain, so if you have the background of Pathfinder Hopeful, you get the expert in lore, and you gain untrained improvisation built into your background, which is really, really nice. So next, at level 4, you can take the class feat of Careful Explorer. Prerequisites: again, you must be part of the archetype. You've explored through enough dusty tombs and hidden vaults to gain a sixth sense about traps, and sometimes notice them when you're not even trying to. Even if you are not searching in exploration mode, you get to have a check that finds traps that normally require you to search for them. So essentially, when you're in exploration mode, you're always considered searching from a GM perspective. Someone with a player in your group that has this is considered to be searching no matter what exploration they're doing. So even if they're refocusing, even if they're repairing an item, well, whatever, yeah, they're always searching, which is really great. So they always are rolling perception, even because they don't even have to, or they're always considered to be rolling perception, which is pretty sweet. Deft cooperation. Again, prerequisite is being from the dedication. When you set things up to help your allies, you also gain some of the fruits of your labors. When you successfully aid an attack roll or AC, you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to attack rolls or AC against that enemy until the end of your turn, whichever you granted to your ally. When you successfully aid a skill check, you can attempt the exact same skill check, not just using the same skill, but using it for the same purpose. For instance, a climb check to climb the same wall on your next turn and still gain the +1 circumstance bonus to your skill check, which is pretty nice. We have thorough reports at level 4 as well. Lots of level 4 stuff, which I could bitch about some other time. But anyway, your reports are thorough and informative, and putting your thoughts to paper helps you retain the information. Keep track of each type of creature you successfully identify with recon knowledge. So when attempting to recon knowledge checks against creatures on your list in later encounters, +2 circumstance bonus, and you learn an additional fact about the creature on a success, which is so good. It's really, really good. Very undervalued. Very, very good. Next, we have the Wayfinder Resonance Tinkerer, again at level 4. Not a fan. You can use the unusual resonance of your Wayfinder to grant it additional effects. You choose one cantrip from the Arcane, Divine, Occult, or Primal list, and you add it to your Wayfinder. Pretty bitchin'. So that concludes the Where in the World, episode 1, Absalom and the Starstone Isle. In terms of my review here as a GM for Absalom and the Starstone Isle, when it comes to Absalom, obviously you have the Agents of Edgewatch that have that adventure path has now pretty much taken over that part or that city. But honestly, something I would use as a GM, I would use that what was it, what was the stone called? Give me 2 seconds here. So sorry. The Aeon Orb that was mentioned in the Swordlands. That's a great adventure. Again, maybe not a full campaign, but if you want to, kind of do your own thing, you don't want to run an adventure path or run a predetermined adventure. Having adventurers go retrieve go find the final, or go find the Aeon Orb and rebuild that tower and return Absalom's magically enhanced forest back so they can regain lumber, or I should say get a hold of the lumber once again so those trees can grow back and all that stuff. That's a really cool adventure. As a player, I would definitely, especially if you've never played a Pathfinder specifically before, this is a great way to be able to play a Pathfinder, even if it's in an adventure path or a homebrew setting. You're not full thrusted into being a Pathfinder, because unbeknownst to most or many, is the fact that Pathfinders, the whole Pathfinder society is usually reserved for the open play, much like those who've ever heard of it, D&D Adventure League. It's the group play where typically at a store, because of Corona, not anytime soon, but you typically go to your local gaming store, and you would have a whole bunch of tables, and everyone, you level at faster rates, and the more you play, the more access to different backgrounds or archetypes and stuff like that you get. And usually takes you a few sessions to level, no matter what level you are, so everything is kind of scaled and allows you to take part in a story, in a major grand campaign of a story. And no matter what level you are, whether you're new to it or you're midway, or you're level 7, level 9, everyone doing these quests is a part of a big group of gameplay. All work together to complete this one major campaign. but that's called Pathfinder Society, and that's what the entire Pathfinder draw is for, is they want that to be primarily for group play. But there are plenty of players out there who have wanted to have a Pathfinder in their and play a Pathfinder in their Pathfinder games, which makes plenty of sense. So this really kind of gives you the ability, or just as long as you say, hey, I'm from Absalom, as long as you allow that, it gives you the ability to be a Pathfinder in any environment, in any climate, which is great. So yeah, but that is going to be it. So as you can see, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed and you're one of the Cardinals, and you're a Cardinal, because that's what we call our fans here. We call them Cardinals, hence Cardinal Adventures. Use that beak right there and go and smash that bell you see on YouTube. Make sure you stay up to date with all our content in the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome to the nest. Bye-bye.